do you see 7?
Yep.
All right. It's 7 o'clock, ladies and gentlemen. Shall we? If everybody would please rise, we'll start with saying a pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Just like to start, as I remind the board and myself, and as we look at our agenda tonight and as we make decisions throughout the night, of the reason of our mission and vision statement. Our vision, inspiring all learners to be engaged and successful. Our mission, to provide an enriching environment to meet the needs of all learners. Our core values, respect, integrity, students first, and excellence. We rise to the occasion and reach for the future. Thank you. All right, it looks like we've got all the board present tonight, so we just need a motion to approve the agenda in front of us.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. All right, we'll be moving right into our hearing of delegates tonight. Again, I want to thank everybody for speaking, taking the opportunity to speak to the board. Just a few quick reminders. I know you were all sent kind of the policies. There is a 5-minute time limit, and we hope that everybody can abide by that. It gets kind of awkward maybe when we got to tell somebody it's 5 minutes up. So hopefully everybody will be able to abide by that. Again, also you will also notice that it isn't really a dialogue at that point between the board and the individual speaking. We will, as a board, have some dialogue on 7A, the mass protocol. As you can see, that's in our agenda. And when you do come up to the podium, please introduce yourself and who you are, and then the next person right after the first one's done, they can just come right up and go in the order that you see on the agenda on the screen above you. So again, I'll ask Joe to at least do a little prelude here tonight of where we are with our mass protocol currently.
Yeah, everyone, thanks for coming tonight. If you didn't sign in, there are 2 sign-up sheets for all of our visitors. Make sure that you do that. On September 29th, Governor Reynolds announced some changes in the Iowa Department of Public Health's quarantine guidelines, which said that an individual who was wearing a mask would not have to be quarantined for 14 days when they are defined by public health as being in close contact to a person who tests positive if they were also wearing a mask. I think it's really important to note that all 5 of our school buildings in Algona Community Schools are very, very safe, and they're very, very healthy. They have been from the start of the school year, and they still remain that way. However, we had and have experienced a number of quarantines throughout our first 5.5, 6 weeks in school. From Friday, September 25th till October 2nd, which is a week's time period, we quarantined 63 students in that time period. So we had 60 students who were healthy with no symptoms who went home for 14 days. That process was one that, again, it wasn't our policy. It's not our protocol. It's one that has been placed upon us by the Iowa Department of Public Health. And when the opportunity to change that and keep our healthy students in school came about, it was something we felt was best for kids. That process that we then went into is I spoke with our administrative team, and I spoke with all 7 of our board members about the changes that had taken place from the state level, the impact that could have on us. And mask requirement certainly wasn't something that everyone wanted, but it was something that the district was left little choice in doing what was best for kids and keeping kids in school. So we did change our masking protocol at that time from recommended, which it had been previously from the beginning of the school year, to required when social distancing is not possible. So we just wanted to provide some of that background information before our speakers tonight.
Okay, Shane, yes, please step up to the podium.
Hey there, I'm Dr. Shane Tafe here with Tafe Wellness Center. First off, I just want to say as a proud alumni of Algona High that I fully support the school, the students, the teachers, and the administrators through this difficult time. I also have great respect and admiration for our doctors, our nurses, our CNAs, everybody that's been working on the front lines during this. I fully support your efforts and the lengths you guys go to protect your patients. COVID-19 is a definitely real thing and has devastating effects, especially for those that are susceptible and have many pre-existing conditions. But the wearing of masks has not been shown to be effective at preventing the spread and transmission of viral-borne respiratory diseases, especially within the healthy and asymptomatic. You are all tasked with a difficult job in the light of the circumstances regarding this. I'm not one to create division or dissent and typically stay apolitical, but the idea of a mask mandate doesn't sit well with me as a parent, but also as a citizen of our country, we're afforded certain rights and freedoms. I truly believe that a large percent of the malcontent that has happened could have been simply avoided if parents were given more than about an 18-hour to 24-hour notice of mandatory implementation. Wearing masks is not a one-size-fits-all solution either, and in some cases it can be highly detrimental to some young students' health and well-being. There are many factors to take into consideration, such as students with asthma, allergies, anxiety, seizure disorders, sensory processing issues, and many more who could respond poorly to prolonged mask wearing. Research from the WHO openly states that mask wearing for children 5 and under is potentially not recommended or inconclusive, but also for ages 6 to 11, the data is limited, and that compliance to wearing masks with touching and fidgeting and improper wearing can be difficult and hinder their ability to learn. There are real downsides to wearing masks, which include but are not limited to increased bacterial infections, staph infections or MRSA around the mouth, headaches, decrease in oxygen saturation, to name a few. But what about the long-term impact of emotional, psychological front? How about the children in the school district who have PTSD from childhood emotional trauma, in which wearing masks can be a trigger for them? I more than understand that some of these situations can be outliers and that the implementation was due to the new quarantine rules, but it still wasn't going to be accepted by all parties. And I would not have a problem myself or my children wearing a mask to school for the greater good if cloth or surgical masks will ever be proven to be effective at reducing the transmission of viral diseases. But research has been conclusive time and time again, even by finding a simple PubMed search, on the internet. And this also comes from prestigious journals such as Journal of American Medical Association and the New England Journal of Medicine. Wearing a mask to prevent viral respiratory transmission is akin to putting up a chain link fence around your yard in order to keep the mosquitoes out. It's due to the size of the particles of viruses, which are up to 1,000 times smaller than a hair and 50 times smaller than bacteria. Cloth masks have even been shown to have a perfusion rate of up to 97%. It's one thing for adults to wear masks, but if they have underlying health conditions or in certain work settings, but all the data points contrary to children wearing masks. According to WHO, only 1 to 7% of all COVID-19 cases are reported among children. Just look at the survival rates as well. Anywhere from a 99.5 to 99.997 rate of survival for those aged 0 to 69 years old. Children are not the super spreaders that experts initially thought, and they're far from it. So then why are we having our young children wear masks that at best provide minimal protection, and it doesn't typically infect them or show symptoms, and in which they have a near 100% survival rate? One recurring thing that seems to perpetuate this collective panic that we all have, and sometimes paralyzes to the facts and statistics, is just fear. The continual fear-mongering, it seems, by our national media and where we get our news. Early prediction models showed a high probability of death rate, which caused a lot of this fear and panic, but it turned out to be inaccurate. The initial lockdowns was to make sure that we don't overburden our healthcare workers and our healthcare system. The goalposts seem to change every single month with new cases, where now it seems as we have a case-endemic. All the while, we disregard the percentage of hospitalizations and overall recoveries. As a last week, we're testing over 1 million people per day, and that includes asymptomatics as well. There are flaws in accuracy issue with PCR testing for messenger RNA viruses, and they can have a hard time distinguishing between the common cold, a flu, or COVID-19, and they also have a high false positive rate. When we act out of fear and emotion, the worst in all of us comes out. No more apparent in the world of social media, where faceless interaction gives way to name-calling, bullying, lack of respect, and intolerance for other views and beliefs. Trust me, none of us here want to see anybody else or anybody's loved ones pass away from this pandemic. I'm so sick and tired of the continued division that has played out in 2020. It's hard not to think that 2020 being an election year is not an instigator for a lot of decisiveness that's going on in our country. This whole situation reeks of politics, and especially when we look at other countries' response and their statistics to COVID-19. I don't take lightly to anyone or any entity or any government institution mandating anything on me or my family. We're afforded certain constitutional rights, and among them, freedom of religion, freedom of health choices, and freedom to choose what's best for ourselves. I believe it sets a dangerous precedent, and I fear for what could happen in the future if we just don't stand up what we believe in. Lastly, I don't want to dismiss those in which a quarantine can cause severe financial and economic burden on their family, and the same goes to those that had to pull their children out of school as well. What I love most about our community is our ability to rally around the cause and our ability to rise together to help those in need. We were able to raise over $1 million for a field turf project, so I'm confident the leaders in our community could be able to come together and help those that are in need. Lastly, our leaders here on the school board, our administration, and within the community need to come together to create unity rather than division. Leaders and renowned world experts in public health and epidemiology from the likes of Stanford, Harvard, and Stanford Medical have also came together recently advocating that the young and healthy go about their normal lives while we focus on specific focused protection for those that need it the most. Parents should get to choose what's best for their children, and if wearing a mask is beneficial for your child or you, great. But they shouldn't be forced upon asymptomatic, healthy children as long as parents are responsible for those outcomes. Point blank, I don't believe that healthy kids should have to quarantine, especially if they had negative tests and have no symptoms whatsoever. And so I understand you guys are put in a terrible position of kind of a backhanded mask mandate that's happened for us. And I respect all your guys' time. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tavy.
Good evening. For those who I have not met, my name is Rachel Vantire. I am a family physician at Kossuth Regional and the medical director of the Kossuth County Board of Public Health. I speak on behalf of myself, the other providers here with me tonight, as well as Drs. Yelly and Brinkley, and PAs Jen Von Bank, Greg Zog, and Travis Larson, who could not be here. We would like to commend the Algona Community School District for its swift and reasonable action in response to the change in the Iowa Department of Public Health's quarantine guidelines. As Mr. Carter mentioned, on September 29th, the IDPH announced that moving forward, in the case of a COVID-19 exposure, if both persons involved are wearing masks, the unaffected individual no longer needs to quarantine for 14 days. They can simply monitor for symptoms. Algona Community School District's new mask protocol is a sensible measure and a direct reflection of this guideline. Over the last 7+ months, we have learned more about the transmission of this new virus and a mask's ability to prevent, or at least greatly reduce, the spread. We now know that children do contract the illness. Thankfully, their symptoms are typically mild. However, individuals can be contagious up to 48 hours prior to the onset of symptoms. Because symptoms can be mild and not rapidly identified, this could mean several days' worth of exposure at school. For this reason, universal mask use will help limit the spread of COVID-19 before a person begins to show symptoms. So far this year, we have quarantined over 300 healthy kids in Kossuth County schools. This causes a major disruption in their education, contributes to social stress, and can be financially disastrous for parents who cannot afford to miss work. One of the more interesting and disturbing aspects of the novel coronavirus is the fact that individuals can be asymptomatic carriers and transmit the disease without ever having symptoms themselves. Expecting kids to make the altruistic decision to protect the people around them simply does not work, especially if they are not even aware that they are carrying a disease. Mandatory masks will protect our students, teachers, and staff. Although we may never be able to put a number on how many that is, the medical evidence, the most recent medical evidence from the New England Journal, I have copies of this here with me tonight, the American College of Cardiology, another article. These are both out within the last couple of weeks. These articles are very clear that masks do work. They are safe and effective and recommended by the CDC, the WHO, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and your local healthcare providers sitting here with you tonight. 7 months ago, my partners and I were facing the news of a new illness spreading across the world, an illness that proved deadly to some that neither we nor anyone else in the medical community had ever seen or treated. And so we prepared for the worst. We prepared to use one machine to be life support for multiple patients. We were ready to transport multiple patients at a time on buses if needed. We studied to be backup ICU doctors in the case that larger regional hospitals were overwhelmed. So much was unknown. We feel very fortunate that we have not had to deal with that type of situation. In the last months, we have been able to learn a lot about COVID-19, how it is spread, and how to treat it. It makes the early days of March seem like a bad dream. Instead, we are now dealing with a new nightmare. We have a virus that, although does not appear to be as horrific as initially thought, is still very real. We have a rising case count in our county, and we have citizens and parents divided over the medical community's simple recommendation to wear a mask. Wearing a mask is not a political issue. It is not a religious issue. It is not a parental right issue. It is a public health issue. This should not be an issue dividing our community. Instead, it should be us, our community and school, uniting against a virus and all of the disruption that it has caused. I cannot guarantee that anyone's child will not get COVID-19, but masks do help. By working together and making masks mandatory, we can keep more kids and adults healthy, we can keep unaffected students in school and activities, we can keep parents at their jobs. As we have seen several times during this pandemic, rules have changed, and we must keep up. Most of the time, the rule changes have forced limitations. This time, the change in rules actually empowers students and families. We now have the ability to keep ourselves out of quarantine, but it takes everyone. Leaving masks optional will continue to place students and our teaching staff at risk, both in terms of health and education. Thank you again to Algona Community School District for always making decisions that put students first.
Thank you, Dr. Van Tiger.
Good evening. I'm Sarah Borman. I am a parent of 4 students here at Algona. I'm here to speak for those who cannot mask up. As a parent of a senior, a junior, a 6th grader with an IEP, and a kindergartner, I was disappointed to hear of the decision of a mask mandate. While I appreciate your position to make decisions for all students, I am sad to learn that my position as a parent was with at least one child who would not be able to mask up easily was not considered important. The lack of consideration for those children with medical, behavioral, or religious exemptions is very unfortunate. What plans have been put into place for children who have these limitations besides isolation from other students? What will this do for their mental health? I am concerned for our educators also, as we have now added mask policing to their already difficult job. With this virus being new and so much unknown, I am concerned for all the long-term effects for our children wearing masks for 10 hours daily, 5 days a week, if we are to consider our students who are busing. What plans do you have in place to allow children to remove masks for periods of time during the day? As adults dealing with mask mandates in our community, we have the option to leave areas of close contact to remove masks when we are feeling anxious or having difficulties. Will our children have these same opportunities in our school, or will they be in trouble for removing masks to take breaths? This decision left parents with less than 24 hours notice to make serious decisions for their children. I ask why. There are other proven helpful mitigations: 6-foot distancing, hand washing and hygiene, monitoring of health, which as parents we should be doing anyway. We did have a hybrid plan offered as an option that was offered for all in mind. What happened to that? The 14-day quarantine, also an option, which of course was not ideal, but it did offer options for all. I feel like all children were not considered. This mandate for my non-mask wearing child would force isolation, adding to watch their peers interact with each other, and they cannot. It has created the non-mask wearer into a minority for something they cannot control. I say this because some parents are now masking children so that they are able to just be in school, not because they want to or feel that it is right. I'm very concerned for the psychological effects that mask wearing may create, which no one, expert or not, can speak on until these effects come into place and time has passed and we have seen what they are. I'm just not willing to have my children be a part of this experiment. It's online for us, and I'm sad for those parents who are unable to make this option work and share in my concerns. There are many more points that I could make here this evening, However, time doesn't allow for it. I hope you will consider what I have told you and hope that it will be helpful to the parents that are left with no options and must send their children to school en masse. I will leave you with this. 5 weeks into the school year, my 4 non-mask wearing children, whom I discussed hygiene and social distancing with, never faced any exposure. How is this possible? Never in the history of any virus have we ever masked up and shut down. Never has a school system been able to make a medical decision for our children. Even as a community, when advised by a physician what is best for our health or the health of our child, we have still had options in our health. I ask you, why is this different? Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah.
My name's Amanda Adams. I want to thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening. Public speaking is not an area that I excel in, and therefore I've typed out some of my thoughts to try and keep me on track here tonight. I would like to present to you some of the science behind masks that may surprise you. There has been extensive randomized controlled studies and meta-analysis reviews of RCT studies, which all show that masks and respirators do not work to prevent respirator influenza-like illnesses or respirator illnesses believed to be transmitted by droplets and or aerosol particles. I would hate to think that our school board is buying into the present propaganda about masks and only selecting or receiving incomplete science that serves their needs. Therefore, as a nationally registered emergency medical technician, I would like to take a review of some medical literature. Here are key anchor points to the extensive scientific literature that establishes that wearing surgical masks and respirators, example, N95 masks, do not reduce the risk of contracting verified illness. A study done by Jacobs, JL, and I have all of these noted if you'd like to see them later. The use of surgical face masks to reduce the incidence of the common cold among healthcare workers in Japan, a randomized controlled study, found that N95 masked healthcare workers were significantly more likely to experience headaches. Face mask use in healthcare workers was not demonstrated to provide benefit in terms of cold symptoms or getting colds. In a study done by Ben Reza, the use of masks and respirators to prevent transmission of influenza, a systematic review of the scientific evidence, there were 17 eligible studies, and none of the studies established a conclusive relationship between mask respirator use and protection against influenza infection. In 2020, the effectiveness of N95 respirators versus surgical masks against influenza, a systematic review and meta-analysis found that a total of 6 RCTs involving 9,171 participants were included. There were no statistically significant differences in preventing laboratory-confirmed influenza, laboratory-confirmed respirator viral infections, laboratory-confirmed respiratory infection, and influenza-like illnesses using N95 respirators and surgical masks. Meta-analysis indicated a protective effect of N95 respirators against laboratory-confirmed bacterial colonization. The use of N95 respirators compared with surgical masks is not associated with a lower risk of laboratory-confirmed influenza. The conclusion regarding all of these is that masks do not work. No RCT study with verified outcomes shows a benefit for healthcare workers or community members in households to wearing a mask or respirator. There is no such study. There are no exceptions. Likewise, no study exists that shows a benefit from a broad policy to wear masks in public. Furthermore, if there were any benefit to wearing a mask because of the blocking power against droplets and aerosol particles, then there should be more benefit from wearing a respirator or N95 compared to a surgical mask. Yet several large meta-analysis and all the RCT prove that there is no such relative benefit. Masks and respirators do not work. In light of medical research, therefore, it is difficult to understand why public health authorities are not consistently adamant about this established scientific result. Since the distributed psychological, economic, and environmental harm from a broad recommendation to wear masks is significant, not to mention the unknown potential harm from concentration and distribution of pathogens on and from used masks. In this case, public authorities would be turning the precautionary principle on its head. It is also instructive to know that until recently, the CDC did not recommend wearing a face mask or covering of any kind, unless a person was known to be infected, that is, only until recently. Non-infected people need not wear a mask. When a person has TB, we have them wear a mask, not the entire community of non-infected. The recommendations by the CDC and the World Health Organization are not based on any studies of this virus and have never been used to contain any other virus, pandemic, or epidemic in history. Sanitation is another huge issue associated with masks. Masks are a breeding ground for bacteria growth. How many times have kids forgotten to take home their gym clothes to have them washed? Does no one else ever fight with their middle schooler to take a shower? Are we really expecting our kids and families to properly wash these daily masks on a consistent basis? I would like to list for you some of the common symptoms, problems associated with prolonged face mask wearing. Headaches, cold sores, sore throat, hypercapnia, abnormally elevated carbon dioxide levels within the blood, increased airway resistance, hypoxia, brain fog, difficulty concentrating, exhaustion, dermatitis, painful rashes, and skin damage on your face. These are just a tip of the iceberg. How can you really justify taking on these risks? Masks and respirators do not work. My last point is honestly about rights, plain and simple. I am not asking that everyone remove their mask. If you believe it works for you, then by all means wear it. What I am asking for is the right to choose what's best for our family. I won't ask anyone else to remove their mask. I simply ask that you allow us to not wear ours. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. Okay, thank you, everyone, for staying within our guidelines. We appreciate that. Moving on, we'll go into the consent items. Gloria, you had a chance to review the board bills. Did you see, were they all in order?
Tom.
Oh, it was Tom this year. I'm sorry. Tom, sorry.
The bills are in order and should be approved.
All right, thank you, Tom. So, all right, we all received the consent and the invoices earlier. Is there any questions or further discussion on that?
You'll see in the financial statements that expenses for the district are up around $300,000 from this time last year till now. However, revenues are up about $500,000. So we look very good in our balance and in our surplus.
Okay. All right. Hearing no other discussion, I'd ask for a motion to approve the consent items.
I make a motion to approve the consent items.
Thank you, Tom. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, motion and a second. Andrea? Any other discussion? Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Board reports, nothing at this point, I don't believe, unless anybody had something. We'll move into the superintendent's report.
Yeah, again, thanks to all of our speakers tonight. And I want to thank our board for taking the time. I spent considerable time with them in discussions with this a few weeks ago, over the phone, emails, texts, as well as our administrative team. It's certainly not, it's not an easy thing to do for us to change a protocol that is as impactful as this one was. I kind of outlined some of those timeline of events that happened that started with Governor Reynolds announcing the Iowa Department of Public Health changes for non-healthcare, non-residential settings when quarantines were no longer recommended if a potential exposure occurs, if both contacts are wearing face coverings. You know, as everyone knows, up to October 1st, in our district, face coverings were highly recommended by the Algona Community School District. Up until October 1st, we had quarantined many students. I outlined that 63 students in a 7-day time period. So requiring face masks for students and staff when social distancing is not possible would eliminate that, the majority of those quarantines. You know, in the end, the change in protocol was something we felt was just best for kids and something we had to do. Continuing to quarantine and send home healthy students for 14 days at a time was just something that academically, socially, emotionally was going to impact hundreds of our kids throughout the school year, and there'll be thousands of lost instructional days as a result. So it was something that allowed us to deal with that very serious issue.
Okay.
Just any discussions on that?
Go on the mask protocol discussion we can talk about here a little bit as part of the,
Sure. I'll make some comments. I don't have anything written as well as you guys had written here to share. I just kind of made some notes as people were talking, but I'll just reiterate what Mr. Carter said. I mean, this has certainly been a challenging time, and I've heard, different things, where was the school board vote on this? And really to change a protocol like that when it needs to change quickly, I mean, it's really Mr. Carter's job to run the school. And he, I'll verify, I mean, he contacted all of us. I mean, he contacted me, and, most of you know kind of, I do have a differing opinion on this, but, he just asked, where do you stand? And I said, honestly, just poll everybody and see where everybody is, and make a decision what you feel is best for the kids. And that's what he did, and we met afterwards to implement it. And, the thing is this has been a challenging year. I think if you talk to any teacher in our district, if you talk to any administrator, this is probably one of the most challenging. I think even if you talk to, teachers that are near retirement, they'll say this has been by far the most challenging year. And so, teachers are caught in the middle of this too, where it's, trying to do what's best and sort of go along with school policy and stay professional in it. And I wish there was a motion item tonight. I mean, a lot of people don't know how a school board meeting works, but really there's not a motion item for us to vote on this tonight, okay? That's not something that's going to take place. That's something that has to be announced beforehand, but there will be discussions, I believe, that'll, taken apart everybody's consideration. If there was a motion item, it'd be nice. It's like, hey, make COVID go away. I think we'd all be like, yes, let's make that happen. But everybody is entitled to their opinion, myself included, and everybody on the board. And I don't know if we have a unanimous sort of opinion. And that's what makes, honestly, a healthy board, too, is to get people different perspectives to make, to take and apart kids, that maybe, aren't comfortable, or families, and versus, an elderly teacher that, is concerned about this. And so, one thing that kind of changed my opinion a little bit on this is I had a patient, an 80-year-old guy in my office the other day, and people often ask me, how's the school doing? And this gentleman said, or I just said, the school's going to have a mask mandate now, and, that's certainly a big deal. And their response was, good, it's about time. And what I realized was this individual I know has no kids in the school. I think their kids grew up in the school and are now out of state, and no grandkids, but they felt comfortable by having kids wear masks. And really, people's individual opinions is based on their risk, how they perceive their risk, whether, they don't see this as a risk or not. And so I talk to my patients about their individual risks, their health problems, how they should be approaching this, and which I think is a healthy discussion for everybody to have. But really, our kids are healthy. They're the lowest risk population. So I do struggle with, the mask mandate. It's not something that I want to see for honestly, I don't think anybody really wants to see our kids in our community wearing a mask, but it's really how we're processing this, COVID crisis or whatever you want to call it. So kids are low risk, but really what amounts to as a school board is we have little to no choice in making this decision because of the Iowa Department of Public Health. I've talked to Mr. Carter about it, and we really can't not follow public health policy. I mean, it's still, they can override what we as a local district do, and whether that's, it is what it is, I guess. So, my opinion does differ, but that doesn't mean that I don't support our school, and it doesn't mean that I don't have the full support of our superintendent and our administration in this, because they're doing what they can. The teachers are doing what they can. What I want to see, I would love for our school to be normal. I think our school for the last 7-8 weeks has been probably one of the most normal school districts in the state of Iowa, and we've remained healthy. Take that for what it is. We've given our kids an opportunity to have a normal school year, and I think we owe a lot to our kids too. A lot of our fears as parents or the elderly, our kids are caught in the crossfire of this, and it's not always fair to them. We had a policy, just for example, when the school year started about recess, individual classrooms within the grade, were assigned different parts on the playground. Since that time, we've been able to lift that restriction, so now grades can play together at recess. I don't believe there's a mask mandate at recess. I'm looking at Ms. Schuster, that there's not. And so, I think as our district or our job as board members is to look at the policies, look at the health concerns, work with all parties, and try to make things as normal as we can for our kids constantly. Nothing in this community, and I do believe this, is more important than this school. It's really what holds our town together. I mean, you look at places that lose their school and they've lost their identity. Our identity is this school. So, I mean, I'll continue to voice my opinion, for what it's worth for, people that voiced. I mean, I feel very much similar to what you guys do. But it doesn't mean that I'm not supporting the school, going forward, or our administration. So those are just my thoughts. I think we'll have lots more discussion, as the school year goes. We'll continually talk about policies and what can be changed or needs to happen to really, it's, our thing is students first, and that's really what we need to think about. And this is, students first. And there's going to be different opinions about what that means, whether it's safety or normal. I'm just one voice, but I'd be interested to see what everybody else has to say.
I'm going to just take a second here. The purpose of this thing was to keep healthy kids in school. Our daughter was one of those who had to spend 2 weeks at home because of an exposure. And if you remember back your senior year, that was pretty important. And, I want to applaud the teachers. They do an outstanding job of getting lessons and zooming into the classroom and things like that, but it's just not the same as being in that classroom. And, so it really made me think long and hard about this, because I'll be honest, I don't enjoy wearing a mask. I don't think anybody enjoys wearing a mask. But if the person who sits next to me in algebra class, or whatever class it might be, chooses not to wear one, they happen to get sick, now I have to miss 2 weeks of my senior year because of their choices. She informed me the other day that we have a young man sitting out the last 2 football games of his career because of, I mean, those are the things we need to think about. We need to think about others and what can we do to keep these kids in school, because that's what it's all about. I saw a fact that, at current rates, we're going to have 2,000-3,000 days of missed school, perfectly healthy kids missing school. And that's not what we want. We don't want kids missing school and they're healthy. We want kids to be in school. We want them to participate. Right now, this is the most important time of their life when they're, and I'm speaking from a high school senior's point of view. And so that was the purpose of this mask mandate, to keep healthy kids in school.
Anybody else would like to speak here?
So I would say, too, I had an experience here recently with 2 kids home for 2.5 days, just 2.5 days while they were being tested. And I thought at the time, while we were waiting on the test results, one, hopefully they don't have it and they can go back to school here soon. Just the 2.5 days brings me back to last spring, where we've all been, right, having kids at home and trying to educate them from home, which is a challenge for all. But also the kids that we're going to end up having to stay home because or get quarantined because they had been exposed to my kids, which made me feel horrible. So in talking with Joe, I supported this from the governor's policy update, and again, goes back to kind of keeping kids in school. But Brent had mentioned, it's about community as well, and I'd be curious. I guess I'm looking at it, we hear conflicting data all the time, right, in the news. We hear it here tonight in terms of the various studies on mask effectiveness and so on and so forth. Personally, I'm kind of looking to our Department of Public Health for guidance and whatnot. Joe, have we had any discussions, or will we have any discussions as it relates to now as we move indoor for sporting events and large crowds and that type of thing?
Yeah. We've had a lot of discussions, Mr. Cecil, Mr. Jacobson, and I. I met with some of the public health doctors, Dr. Van Tiger and Dr. Lampy. We specifically talked about our events. And this was when our community positivity rate started to increase, if we needed to look at our protocols for our events and alter those in any way. The recommendation is to mask our spectators for our events, and I think that's probably even intensified indoors. With the mask requirement that for our students and staff, we feel we've been able to protect that group of people. We had a volleyball game last Thursday. We have one tomorrow night and Thursday again. So our students who are sitting together, they're wearing masks. Our students at the football game on Friday were wearing masks. And we distance them some, certainly not to 6 feet, but to control that somewhat. But as we move to the winter sports season and we have indoor basketball and wrestling and concerts and other things that take place, I think that's probably a further discussion to be had.
Yeah. I think the policy changed because it's the quarantine thing, Todd. I mean, it's hard to argue. I mean, that's just what we're dealt with, But, I've talked to Mr. Carter too. I mean, I think it's important to see people's faces. If a teacher's in front of a classroom and 6 feet away, I don't see why they can't teach without a mask on. But I think people are so scared to even take a mask off when it's an appropriate time that it does affect our students. And as far as different events go too, I mean, it's about the kids. We're not requiring people wear a mask if they come in tonight. I'm not wearing one up here because it has nothing to do with the quarantine of a kid, tonight. And I think that's an important thing to have in mind. I mean, the policy was changed based on the quarantine guidelines. I'm not sure if the Iowa Department of Public Health would have come down with that, we would have changed policy as a district. We can all have different views on that, but that's really where we're at because we weren't seeing a bunch of cases in the school. I mean, the issue was healthy kids were being quarantined. So.
Well, I think I had comments tonight that were said, why was it so quick? I think we debated for a while, send out the letter and let's maybe look at Monday the 5th instead of right away or whatever that Monday was. But to me, it was just about tomorrow 14 more kids could be quarantined or 10 more kids could be quarantined. If we could prevent that and keep them in, I've always looked at our RISE, students first, and we all know it's best for them to be in class, and that's the first thing that came to my mind, and I know that was the reason that I definitely, we got back into this as we talked about, but it's important, that we can keep our kids, and if masks are able to do that, I appreciate that too. And again, as everybody stated, I appreciate the administration, I appreciate the teachers. Teachers have stress on them. I live with a teacher, and I've never seen her more tired at 8 o'clock at night this year than any year she's taught for 33 years. So they are working very diligently and hard, and there's just a lot of stress to everybody within our classrooms. So, and I know this mask policy, causes a little bit of that too, and what we did, mask or no mask before, but I think it's best for the kids to be in school.
It's not a one-size-fit-all. We've all heard stories. There's different stories about different kids, and really it's meeting all needs of all learners, and it's an important discussion to have. I'm glad we're having it in the open, and it's, just need to keep moving forward.
I also think it's best for students to be in school. I do think we maybe overlook possibly the desires and wishes of each individual family. And I don't think that should be taken lightly, even when we're told this is what's best for us as a community. I think we need to be careful when we say this is what's best for students, because this isn't always what's best for students. We need to take in effect that this virus doesn't affect them like it does the remainder of the population. And I do fear that, this is what we need to do. Our students need to be in school. So, we've chosen to have our kids wear masks. But where do we have these discussions about recess? I see concerns with that. Now, it was really not talked about by the board that, hey, we're going to have our students wear masks at recess. and we were asking our students to wear masks at recess. And we had to reach out as parents and tell our student or administrator or teacher, no, they're not going to wear masks at recess. That's ridiculous for kids to wear masks outside. So those are conversations that are important to have, and I don't disrespect anyone's view on this. I have, whether it be at work, at church, we all have conflicting opinions and feel differently about this. But I would hate to see us years down the road look and see possibly how our decisions that are ever changing and the way we are trying to protect certain vulnerable populations go down as abuse to the young, which I see is happening, and abuse to the elderly, which has happened. We all know countless stories of people that are, including my grandfather, who is going into the nursing home, and we pray that he will die because he's being isolated. So let's not take so lightly the thing of asking people to do something they're uncomfortable with. May it be better for everyone in certain vulnerable populations? Yes. But let's be considerate of those parents like me who does not want their kids wearing masks outside, or hear that we are possibly quarantining a walking PE class for high schoolers because they didn't have masks on. We need to be reasonable, have discussions about these things, and be careful on how much authority we put into decisions or different things that we haven't talked about as a board. So I think we need to be careful. Ultimately, our kids need to be in school, and so this 14-day quarantine was the big thing that was all everyone was having to go by. So we are forced to, have our students really en masse in school, but we need to take a serious consideration of those kids or students or groups of individuals that struggle with that. Now, we can, my family's very able to wear masks at school, and we will wear masks because school is the best place for them. But let's be considerate to everyone and not be dismissive of people who maybe don't feel that way about this whole policy.
Well, first of all, I think it's great we're having a school board meeting with the public in attendance. I think it's important we hear from the public viewpoints on the mask protocol and other issues that affect the Algona Community Schools. When we started the school year, it was a very hard decision of how to start the school year and keeping kids safe and keeping our teachers safe. And I think we were all in agreement. We did the best we could to have a great school year starting out. But when the governor made that decision of the mask, wear the mask, and don't wear the mask, get quarantined, it really bothered me. Because I know that kids learn best in the school. If we want kids to achieve and succeed, they need to be in school and learning with that teacher. We also want to make sure our teachers are safe and not being quarantined, because we need the teacher in that classroom. So when Mr. Carter called, we had that discussion. My whole thinking was, if a kid is healthy, I want the kid in school learning and achieving and attaining their dreams, not being at home for 14 days. And that's where I came up with the final decision that for right now, the mask protocol was appropriate to keep the kids safe and in school and to keep our teachers safe and in school. And that's where I hit my decision on. But I also agree that we need to have discussions on this protocol, and we should have future discussions on it. That's where I'm standing right now.
I have just one other question. I think we as a school district are doing a wonderful job of teaching our students, and I want to continue to see that, and I want all students to be, I wasn't trying to be overly negative or anything, so I apologize for that. What is our, as we go forward, what is our end game? I like to have something to work towards. So, and maybe this is a discussion to have with public health, or where is the all clear, or it's safe, or is this years, weeks, months? You know, we all will throw a big party or whatever, but who makes that decision? Obviously, probably coming from public health, the state.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Jay. It's something that we've talked about administratively. Having an exit goal when you change a protocol is, certainly something that we want. I think, societal-wise, one of the most stressful things about this is none of us can see the light at the end of the tunnel. We don't know when it's over. We don't know what that looks like or when it's coming. And unfortunately, some of that's probably the case with this in a black and white of when it's over. I think, to be frank, the Iowa Department of Public Health's release of the quarantine guidelines would be what would probably make us most comfortable in that discussion. But even without that, being able to, see, community numbers decrease, would probably be helpful. We do not have unsafe schools, so one of the factors isn't even our numbers dropping in our schools because they're very, very healthy the way that they are. So I think it would be a conversation for us to have with the Department of Public Health if they felt it was safe. If the quarantine guidelines remained as they are, it would have to be a discussion of, are we comfortable with healthy students going home for 14 days at a time? Which that's a tough one. That's a tough thing to say. We are comfortable with that. But hopefully at some point we see a release of those. And that's something we talked about as a board going back to July and August is that we could release protocols we've put into place, and we do want to do that. And the mask did allow us to release some of those, specifically at the elementary. But that's what I think would have to happen, is a release of some of those quarantine guidelines for us to start to exit from this.
Thank you.
And I guess I have to say, I agree with everybody. I know when Mr. Carter called me, I right away said, I don't like this idea. I don't think it's a good idea. But the more we talked about it, if it's what's going to keep the kids in school, keep them that they can learn. And like Jay said, Tom maybe said, if they're in the school, it's better for them because they are learning. So that was what made my decision too. I do have a couple of questions with the plan for the mask removal. If the students are social distanced within the classrooms, they don't wear a mask, correct? So that's most of the,
So is that,
most of the time.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I mean, that's something too that needs to come from you guys and not have people make their own policies, because I see that happening a lot, is people making their own policies based on their comfort level and their risk factors. And so it's really something that needs to be consistent across the board, because I don't hear that happening in a lot of cases either. Sorry, Gloria.
No, that's all right. The other one is students with disabilities or behavior concerns. Is there a plan that they might not have to wear a mask if that's going to upset them, or?
Yeah. As you know, Gloria, we're accommodating and modifying for students all the time. There's certainly those situations exist where a student with a special need needs an accommodation or a modification. We have some of those in some of our elementaries and middle schools right now already. So yes, we'll continue to do those.
Thank you.
Well, I appreciate all the discussion that we've had tonight. And I think, like I said, this isn't a motion item or anything, but it's great to have this discussion and so everybody can know where the board was involved and how we were involved in this process. So, Joel, I think move on to the certified enrollment.
Yeah, certified enrollment will be submitted on October 15th. Our certified number will be down around 20 students. I think 17 is where Mary Beth and I ended up at. However, the number of students we're serving in the district is slightly up from last year. So a fairly unique situation. Our open enrollment number is up, as well as our whole grade shared number is up. So the summary of this is that it will result in less new money for us on next year's budget. So when we get into budgeting time in the spring, we will receive less new money in supplemental state aid. But we actually have as many or more students in our district, which those are good things. I'll give a more detailed breakdown of our certified enrollment at the November meeting after we certify it on October 15th. Our early retirement program, this is an
Hey, Joe.
informational piece.
Question quick?
Yeah, just a quick question.
Yep.
Is that strictly due to timing? We've got more kids in versus October 1 being the kind of the.
Not timing necessarily. Certified is resident students.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
So it doesn't account for open enroll in, whole grade share in, and so on. So those two numbers are up while our resident number is down. Early retirement. Last year, as a board, you guys passed an early retirement program for our teachers as a 2-year program. Persons who are eligible need to file a written application between October 29th and January 18th. Anyone who has 12 years of full-time service with the district and has reached the age of 55 on or before June 30th is eligible. I'm anticipating 9 teachers possibly having the opportunity to take advantage of this program. The Phase 2 committee has met a couple times over the past few weeks. The committee met with the architects twice, and we're hopeful that committee will be able to bring a recommendation to the board in the November meeting. So if you remember back from our discussions at the summer retreat, the objectives of that committee are to, number one, create handicap accessibility at our athletic complex. Also to update our restrooms at our athletic complex and to create kind of a central entrance to that complex. Really good discussions that have took place. Rough estimates are probably about $1.5 million. We could fund that with general obligation bonds that we could do locally. That's backed by property tax, which would be a PEPAL expense. Again, more to come on that at the November meeting, much more specifics of what the plan may look like and so on for you guys to make a decision if that's where we want to continue to move ahead in our facility planning. The Iowa Association of School Boards Convention information, I've linked that in your report in a couple different places. It's different this year that it's virtual. And really, I want to get a feeling from you guys if you're interested in attending a virtual convention. November 10th is the pre-convention workshop. November 17th is the delegate assembly, which starts at 5:45 in the evening. Whether the board decides to attend virtually or not on the 18th, we need to have a delegate that we choose to be a part of the delegate assembly on November 17th at 5:45. Any initial thoughts on the virtual convention?
I went to the convention for the first time last year, and I think I really got a lot out of it, but it was nice being there. I'm not overly interested in doing a virtual convention, especially when I think it's $300 per person.
I don't think there was much difference in the price, just going virtual.
No difference.
Yeah. So I don't think I've hardly missed one over my years of the board, but the virtual doesn't, for me, it'd be tough to do it virtually, but I've done the delegate assembly. That is in the evening. It's after work. I'm willing to do that, but I'm also willing to give it up if someone would like to do that.
I would like to look at, because I think some of the speakers were really fantastic last year. So I'd like to look at the agenda and the actual speakers, because I wouldn't mind attending some of them.
Yeah, if I went virtual, the keynote would be the ones that would interest me more than anything.
Yeah.
If you can click on the convention information link that's in the report, You can look at some of the keynote speakers. If you are interested in attending, let Mary Beth and I know. If you're interested in serving as the delegate for the delegate assembly, Tom cannot do that because Tom is running for re-election on the IASB board this year after he was appointed last year. So if anyone is interested in that, let us know.
Okay. Any other questions under the superintendent's report? Okay, well, number 8, communication to board. At this point, we have none, and so I think we'll move right into administrative report. And I see Mr. Sudol's here to talk a little bit about FAST data for us tonight.
All right. So if you want to click the next slide, Joe. We have a screener. We use a FastBridge screener, which is our A reading, and it has a bunch of different things. It has math and reading, basically, is what it does. Our early reading is with our early grades prep and through first grade. We use concepts of prints, onset sounds, letter names, letter sounds. All that goes into a composite score that shared with the parents then in the fall, the winter, and the spring. The curriculum-based measurement, which is a passage which students read, that's done in grades 1 through 8. It's a 1-minute timing, works on their fluency development. The A reading, which is a comprehensive assessment, is administered to the students as well. It can be given grades K through 12. It's aligned with the core. The early math, which is in grades K and 1, which has all the things that are listed up here, is also a composite score 2 that's given to the parents. And then the A math is done in grades 2 through 12, and that goes through a broad range of skills and also shared with the parents as well too. What the screeners, what we use them for, we do it 3 times a year, and they do it in the fall, winter, and the spring, and it really gives a chance for the teachers to dig into the data and look at, okay, where are students at, where are we at for instructional materials, how is what we're doing helping meet the students' needs, because we want to make sure that we have 80% of our students, which is on the next slide here, Joe. We want to at least try to have 80% of our class. Obviously, we'd love to have 100%. So, but we want to at least have 80% knows that we're meeting our students' needs with our core curriculum that we have. The benchmarks are determined by the state. The teachers analyze the data after each screening period, and then we decide on are there more areas that we need to dig deeper into to help those students and help meet their needs. So the data that I have here is this is coming in the school year this fall right now. So in kindergarten, it's the bar graph here. You can't really see the number, but 84% of our kindergartners came in at benchmark in the fall right now. First grade, we have 54%, and that is with the early reading assessment that I talked about. The next one is the early math assessment, same grade levels. Kindergarten came in at 87%. First grade came in at 81%. The A reading assessments that was given in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, and these are the ones that we report out to the state. These are our default assessments. 2nd grade come in at 68%, 3rd grade was 70%, 4th grade was 74% in A reading. The A math assessment, 2nd grade came in at 81%, 3rd grade at 76, 4th grade at 64. And the last slide here, I did a little comparison. Where do we come in last fall? Where do we come in this fall? And as you can see on the chart, this fall we're a little bit lower, obviously with being done early in the school year last year, which was not ideal for anybody. Coming in, having all that time off, I think is a factor on our kids. As you can see, kindergarten, we came in at 84% this year. The year before that, in 2019 in the fall, we came in at 88%. In the first grade was 54%. In the fall this year, we were 73% the previous year. 2nd grade, 68%, and this is just in reading. In the fall this year, 80%. In 2nd grade the year before. 3rd grade, 70% is the blue. 73% is the year before. And in 4th grade, 74% this year, 82% the year before that.
Do you think a lot of that drop is from not finishing the previous year?
Yeah, I would. They always talk about summer slide, and that's one of the things we've talked about summer school in the past too, and then we did summer school years ago. Mm-hmm. We haven't done summer school, and that's something I know Joe and I will probably talk about here too in the future is summer school and what's best to help meet our students' needs. One of the things with summer school, we did that because to try to prevent that summer slide, because if a kid takes 3 months off in the summer, all the way through their life, they lose a year's worth of growth. We got off in March, so that's 6 months we're off.
I mean,
almost.
but we didn't get through curriculum that we had planned, right? I mean, so kids are starting third grade 3/4 of the way through
Yeah.
second grade.
And we talk about with teachers, we want to take where the kid's at, and we want to see growth. That's the main thing we want to focus on. So right now, teachers are working extremely hard on trying to catch those skills that maybe we missed in the spring, and then also incorporate those skills we want to keep moving forward.
What do you think is the reasoning for the first and second grade being that's a pretty dramatic difference compared to kindergarten, third, and fourth, if I'm looking at that correctly?
Yeah, each grade level is a little bit different. Each student had different needs. It'd be interesting to look at it from this is just 1 year compared to another year comparison. So it'd be interesting to see a trend line. I don't know if you really can see a trend line over just 2 years. I think you need to have a 4 or 5 year period to see, is there, with that. One of the things we look at is where are we at from fall, where are we at in the spring? Because really that's where we want to be at is in the spring. And obviously in the winter we want to see growth, and in the spring is where we want to see even more growth.
That bar graph on the screen right there is a pretty good image of how impactful closure was on some of our youngest readers. Very.
Any more questions for Mr. Sudol? Thank you, Mr. Sudol. Appreciate your time tonight. All right, moving into our new business. You all were sent out asked for some feedback on the superintendent goals for this coming up year. And I did get a few back and sent Joe what we received. We looked it over and kind of felt that the goals that we've been working on, everything fits into. And we just need to continue to do our progress monitoring and move forward with that. Joe, do you have some more?
Yeah.
I'm not able to load it for some reason here.
Up on the screen right there, and it's linked in your agenda under the superintendent goals. These are the ones we had last year, and these are all tied to district goals that you guys have established for yourself. Within those are a number of different type of indicators which get a little more specific. So when we're talking about providing leadership and developing and maintaining a strong financial position, that also looks at that we're able to maintain an unspent balance of 10% of the total budget. We're able to maintain a fund balance of 8%. We're able to maintain a balanced budget. We spoke to that in the consent items at the beginning of the meeting. So it's not just that we're doing well financially, it's specifically in certain areas. So I think that's a good measurement towards that, and the other two are like that as well. If we get to a place of concern, we will have those established progress reviews in place, and that would be a time that we could always look at specific concerns that we don't feel are necessarily tied to the goals that we've created here.
And again, we do our progress monitoring on these. Probably if we look to continue every couple of months, it would be November, February, and May type situation of where we are. So, if we're all in agreement with that, we'd need to have a motion in a second to move forward with approve the superintendent's goals.
I'll move to approve the superintendent goals.
Thank you, Todd. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
All right, thanks, Jay. Is there any more discussion? I'm sure we'll have more discussion as the year goes on. But then, all in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Same. Thank you. Motion carries. All right, get back to my agenda here. All right. For some reason, that's in my way. What was the next thing?
Progress
There.
review.
Thank you. We set the progress review dates to set them up.
November, February, and May.
Yep.
Okay.
So we're looking at setting the progress review dates in now too, along with that. I kind of thought maybe that was in one, my fault. So we'd also then need to set those for November, February, and May.
Those would just coincide with our board meeting dates.
Yeah, and we just probably go in closed session like we have in the past at the end.
I will motion to approve the dates of November, February, and May for superintendent progress review.
We have a motion, do we have a second?
I'll second the motion.
All right, thanks, Tom. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Second readings on our 100 series policies.
We have a number of different provisions that I found. If you guys have found any others, let us know that as well. In section 101.3, we have in the third paragraph, omit programs or intramural. It still had our 7th grade volleyball as intramural rather than competitive. It has been competitive for a number of years, so we'd want to change that. Section 102 changed the address to 600 South Hale Street. That was the old district address. Section 102E1, please contact the Algona Community Schools Equity Coordinator. This is something we talked about in our agenda review last week. Rather than changing board policy every year or every 5 years to the person who is the equity coordinator, which is Mr. Rodert this year, we could just simply put in equity coordinator. In July, you guys approved the appointees for all those different positions, then we wouldn't have to change the board policies. So section 102E2, E3, and R1 would all be the same, that we just change it to contact the Algona Community Schools Equity Coordinator. The last part is a new policy to the 100 series, and I have linked that in the agenda. This is a new policy that came about with some court cases and changes that happened federally. It's section 106, the discrimination and harassment based on sex is prohibited. The new policy, it's the Title IX educational amendment of 1972, is that the school will not prohibit based on those things. And I did put that policy in there. That was policy that we received from the Iowa Association of School Boards in conjunction with the changes in court cases. I recommend these changes. I also recommend this addition of section 106.
And if we do add the addition of section 106, we do need a motion and a second for approval tonight. If we're comfortable with that.
Can we do all the changes and add in one motion?
Yes, we can make a motion to adopt the revisions and changes and add policy 106.
I make a motion to update the revised policies and add section 106.
Thank you, Andrea. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thanks, Todd. We have a motion and a second, or is there any further discussion?
I have a question.
Yep.
On there, Joe's name is in there. Do we leave that in, or do we change that to match the others then?
We do have to leave it that way. That's part of the new Title IX requirements, is you have to have a specific Title IX coordinator. And there's a number of pieces to that administratively we have to go through some training to create the handbook that aligns with section 106. So we do need to specifically have that in there.
Okay. Thank you, Gloria. All right, any further discussion? We have a motion and a second then. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We get to go into open enrollment. Always good to see.
We have 8 open enrollment applications this month. A lot of this is Mary Beth has been working to clean up some of these open enrollments. And what that means is some students who were previously open enrolled, but we didn't have the appropriate paperwork. So we're getting pretty close, I think, to having all of those completed now. There's 5 open enrolled out students, which those aren't the ones we want to see. However, those are students who have never attended the district previously. So it's not a change in status. We just didn't have the right paperwork. I do recommend the approval of all 8 of these open enroll requests.
All right, do we have a motion for approval?
I make a motion to approve the open enrollment request.
Thanks, Gloria. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Brent, seconds. Any questions or further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Now going to the personnel under new contracts.
We have 2 new contracts. Leela Duran as a cook's assistant and Derek Hagedorn as a food service assistant. I recommend both of these hires.
All right, do we have a motion for the new contracts?
I'll motion to approve new contract.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And resignations, do we have any under?
There are 2 resignations, Stacy Mosier as a teacher associate in the middle school and Terry Johnson as a cook.
Okay, need a motion for the resignations.
I'll make a motion to approve the resignations.
Thanks, Todd. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Brent seconds. All in favor then, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. At this point, we are at the adjournment.
I'll motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, thank you. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we are adjourned. Quick reminder, if you didn't get to sign in before you leave, please do that. There's a sign in at each corner.